Welcome back to the 24th online episode of Peace Time, hosted every Sunday morning by Peace Point with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, live streaming from Dhamma International Meditation Center in Azusa, California. Today's session will be about an hour and 10 minutes long and will consist of a 25-minute talk and 20 minutes of meditation, finishing up with 25 minutes of conclusion, answers to your questions, and news updates. Last time you saw me, we looked at some things worth believing. The topic for the Dhamma talk today will be how to manage daily stress through meditation. And again, this session, I would encourage you to send in any questions you have by emailing me at peacetime.questions@gmail.com so that I can have a shot at answering them next time round. Life can be stressful, and stress can have serious repercussions on our health. At one time or another, many of us will have experienced that sense of being overwhelmed, as if everything were just too much. Stress is normal and to some extent a necessary part of life. Despite it being something everyone experiences, what causes stress can differ from person to person, in contexts such as work, finances, relationships, and parenting. Work stress might mean being worried about a specific project or feeling unfairly treated. Putting your job ahead of everything else can adversely affect many aspects of your life, including the personal relationships and mental well-being, as well as your physical health. The second thing is financial stress. According to the American Psychological Association, money matters were the top cause of stress in the United States, being linked to a number of health problems including depression, anxiety, and diabetes, to name but a few. The third is personal relationship stress. There are people in all of our lives that cause us stress. It could be a family member, an intimate partner, a friend, or a co-worker. Toxic people lurk in all parts of our lives, and the stress we experience from these relationships can affect physical and mental health. There are numerous causes of stress in romantic relationships, and when couples are constantly under pressure, it can threaten the relationship itself. The last is parenting stress. Parents can often be faced with juggling busy schedules that include a job, household duties, and raising children. These demands result in parenting stress. Helicopter parenting can cause a parent to be harsh, negative, and authoritarian in their interactions with their children. Parenting stress can also decrease the quality of parent-child relationships. For example, you may not have an open communication so that your child doesn't come to you for advice, or you and your children may get in arguments more frequently. Before I go any further, I should point out that not all stress is bad. Sometimes stress can be a good thing. There are two types of stress. What we will be talking about today is mainly that stress is negative. Meditate and it will go away. But to have no stress at all is also bad for us. So if you just want to lie about in your bed all day and do nothing, then that would also be bad for your health and your career. So having some sort of stress in your life in manageable doses is good for you. While bad stress is known as distress, D-I-S stress, good stress is known technically as a eustress or EU stress. It is the sort of stress that gives you a sense of urgency to do something with your life, which I'm sure you'd agree is a good thing. So having stress in moderate amounts is good for you. Stress can be characterized as negative when it spills over into a condition where you no longer can see the causes of the stress. You can't separate out the triggers, in other words. That is the point where we would say that stress has become harmful to us. Depriving systems of vital stressors is not necessarily a good thing and can be downright harmful. Systems can be regarded as needing to have some sort of stress to the extent that it indicates that that system is moving in a positive direction. For example, it may indicate that something is evolving in that system. So stress might be thought of as a form of suffering which has the potential to make us more mature in our practice. There's a 2012 book entitled Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb that argues that things gain from stress, the post-traumatic growth that I've talked about in previous sessions, because at least some people grow when exposed to volatility, randomness, disorder, and stressors. Some people thrive on adventure, risk, and uncertainty. The phenomenon is well documented in medicine, where, for example, bones grow stronger due to external load and muscles grow stronger by being put under stress, with the condition that the stressors are neither too large nor too small. So you can see some stress is necessary, but we don't need to go over the top. Stress is something that can be taken seriously, and it needs to be taken seriously since it's what you might call a modern-day illness. In the old days, stress wouldn't be considered something you go to your doctor about, or maybe they just didn't have stress because they kept healthy by chasing their food around the forest, or maybe they just didn't have enough spare time to think about how stressed they were. But these days, we only get the chance to chase our food around the supermarket, and stress has become a recognized medical condition. However, stress is not a completely psychosomatic condition, because it would appear that stress rates are up for the first time in 10 years in the US. 550 million working days are lost annually due to stress. Stress comprises 28% of workplace illness, accidents, absenteeism, diminished turnover and productivity, direct medical, legal, and insurance costs, and, of course, workers' compensation. All of these come from stress and add up to an estimated annual cost to the US businesses of $180 billion. So we need to take stress seriously and need to understand how it comes to affect us by studying its component parts. So if we look at what stress is made up of, you can see that you can consider it in terms of the trigger or stressor, which causes it in the first place. That is, assuming that the cause of the stress is external to you. Even if the triggers are external, we also need to give importance to a second inner component as well, because different people respond to the same stressor to different degrees. A whole group of people may go through the same stressful situation together, but maybe only one comes out of it with PTSD, while the others move on quickly with their lives. There's obviously some component of stress inside us as well. Your perception of a situation can have a big effect on whether it forms a stress reaction or not. The way you respond to it can be more or less dramatic, as defined by your physiology, your behaviors, and also your emotions. Stress can also be subdivided by the different things that trigger it. Knowing the nature of the trigger can help you to know how much meditation can help you overcome that stress and how much you have the possibility to apply other strategies. So there are 4 common triggers that I have singled out for special attention. The first is time stress, and we'll go into more detail of each of these in just a second. So when you have a deadline to meet, you become more stressed as you get closer to the deadline. There is anticipatory stress, which I guess is a little bit like stage fright, where you're not so anxious about what's going to happen to you, but you're scared of the possibility of what might go wrong. Situational stress concerns situations that you are not fully in control of. And finally, encounter stress is where you're scared of a particular person or of having to confront that person. So let's look first at time stress. The most common situation is where you feel trapped by a lack of time to complete a task. For time stress, many practical strategies outside of meditation can help reduce the pressure on you. I'm sure you'd agree that meditating more when you have a deadline looming is not going to help anyone's stress levels. Some solutions to time stress include learning to manage your time better. For example, applying the Eisenhower matrix, which you may have come across in management, where you try to separate what is urgent from what is important. Some things are urgent, but they are not important. A lot of people get these two things mixed up. For example, if the phone rings, it's only going to ring for a few minutes, so in a sense it's urgent that you pick it up. But what they phoned you up about may not be that important. You get a lot of cold calls these days, which can be really annoying, especially if, when the phone rang, you were in the middle of something that might be way more important than the phone call itself. So maybe you need to let it go to voicemail or hire a secretary. Often being able to have that uninterrupted time is pretty important to get really important things done, which may not actually be urgent, but they need time. If you don't have that uninterrupted time, then they don't get completed at all, and anyone who's an author listening in today will appreciate exactly what I'm talking about. If you have revision to do for a critical exam, sometimes it's better to go and sit in the library where you're not going to be interrupted by someone who just wants to chat. Another time management skill to help reduce time-related work pressure is to try to create more time in your working day. Some people apparently like to get to work a little bit early, not because they get paid for it, but because by the time work officially starts, they are organized and good to go, with all their documentation in order. They find that an extra half an hour can save them a lot of stress from being caught out at the last moment unprepared. I'm not recommending that you take your work home with you, but this can be a helpful solution. It can be a challenge to delegate work because it takes the same skills that Tom Sawyer had when he was whitewashing the fence. And again, I'm talking about how you can reduce time pressure on yourself, where you talk people around to feeling it's a privilege to be able to help you to do something, making it more interesting for them. This is what Tom Sawyer managed to do. If you call something a chore, then no one wants to help you with it. In the temple, in fact, we don't have any chores, but we have a lot of merits and community service to make it more inspiring for people to join in. Even trash is referred to as diamond treasure in the temple, so that people are less likely to leave it littering up the temple garden. Another way to overcome time stress is to learn to be more assertive. If you're just a typical nice person, often others will take advantage of you. If you are a nice person, everyone wants to give you lots of things to do. So sometimes there's something to be said for doing the passive-aggressive thing by projecting a certain unapproachable demeanor, so that people go and give their work to someone nicer than you. I'm not saying that you should turn into a complete monster, but you will find that the assertiveness trading skills will be quite relevant to you in this respect. If you aren't already familiar with them, well, I will come to that in a minute. Although some people are just downright inconsiderate, mostly people interrupt you simply because they are not mind readers, so they don't automatically know how you feel about the extra work they're giving you. So they keep stressing you out with more and more work because they think you don't mind. For this reason, sometimes you need to tell them, and I think assertiveness training tells you that you need to say 3 things to those people who are taking advantage of you. Firstly, you need to tell them what is wrong. Secondly, you need to tell them how it makes you feel, and then you need to tell them what you'd like them to do about it. Many people simply don't realize your feelings about something, especially if you happen to be an introvert. Being assertive may mean informing people, probably in the politest possible terms, why you're not happy about the fact they're piling work on you instead of giving it to someone else. Also, although Buddhists are forgiving people, but they normally subscribe to the principle of 3 strikes and you're out. Buddhists are generally a bit of a soft touch, but I think in Thailand they tend to have a sense of pragmatism mixed in with that humility, which keeps Buddhism with one foot in the real world. It helps make Buddhism more than just idealism, so that you won't end up like the Buddhist who once had to ask me, "Are you allowed to be selfish?" Indeed, you do sometimes need to stick up for yourself and not be a complete doormat. Of course, there is a place for behaving like a doormat in Buddhism too, but generally you would want to be a doormat in order to have respect for something which is going to lead you to a better place, a sort of unconditional devotional obedience that would be appropriate for learning a new spiritual skill or proving yourself to a new teacher. It would not be appropriate for paid salaried work, which is what you do just to balance your bank account. So it's not worth burning yourself out for things of zero spiritual significance. So although the workplace is important, you mustn't forget to protect your state of mind and your quality of life. Connected with assertiveness to reduce your time stress, in another bit of internet wisdom, it said that saying no gives more meaning to your yes. So if you say yes every time someone ropes you into doing something, then you will be just taken for granted by them. If on occasion you say no, then when you do say yes, then they realize the value of what you are giving them. This is all to do with having less stress to do with time. Turning now to anticipatory stress, this means people feel dread not of a situation, but of the fear of what might happen or what might go wrong with the situation. You may have prepared well for an exam, but you obsess about all the possible information that you have not revised, and because of that, you underperform. Positive visualization is recommended, which is really just a pep talk language for saying meditate more. For example, sports personalities may visualize themselves winning a race, and lo and behold, they have more chance of winning it, simply because it's like they've rehearsed it in their heads so many times already. Winning seems to come like second nature. Anticipatory stress is obviously more amenable to time stress for strategies that involve meditation, especially positive visualization meditation. But aside from meditation, you can reduce anticipatory stress by rehearsing things to boost your confidence. Back in 2016, I had a doctoral presentation. It is a once-in-a-lifetime, high-stakes interrogation at the top of the educational game, on which hangs whether you will get to graduate with a doctoral degree or not. Fortunately, you can overcome nerves by rehearsing it. You run through it in advance in front of the mirror. You can brainstorm all the possible questions the examiner and the committee will ever ask you about. You can say the answers out loud to yourself and time yourself doing it. If you over-rehearse in this way, you usually end up being so familiar with the scenario that when you come to the actual presentation, it feels like quite an anticlimax, because you are aware of all the other questions they could have asked you if they were really trying to catch you out. So, over-rehearsal is a good way to overcome nerves, especially if you are a shy person. Turning now to situational stress, this happens when you have situations beyond your control, for example, losing your job. For such situations, you can reduce stress by keeping in touch with your body, to be aware of how a stressful situation is making you feel, so that you don't jump to the conclusion that the worst is going to happen. I've heard of strategies like coming back to your breath or naming out loud 5 red objects in the room to keep yourself self-aware. If you catch yourself obsessing about negative possibilities, then try to rein in the thoughts of disaster before it is going to spoil your day just because of those thoughts. If something bad is really going to happen, then deal with it when it actually happens. Sometimes you need to learn to think on your feet so that you can respond even if unexpected things happen to you. You might object, well, you can't prepare for the unexpected, but if you troubleshoot often enough, then you do get better at talking or improvising your way out of unexpected situations. The last category of stress I'd like to discuss, known as encounter stress, is triggered by encountering toxic people. Sometimes you feel scared of particular people or groups of people that intimidate you. Emotional intelligence is a useful way to prepare yourself to deal with people who you feel intimidated by. Emotional intelligence is Daniel Goleman's recommendation, the idea being that with every person, it's like you have an emotional bank account with them, which can be kept in good standing with them or it can be in the red, depending on how many promises you failed to keep in your previous dealings with them. So if you've been a constant disappointment to somebody, emotionally speaking, then if you ever want to call in any favors of your own, then you are likely to end up unrequited. But if you have done a lot of favors for other people in the past, then if you ever need to call in any favors yourself, you're more likely to receive their help. If you have lots of people who intimidate you, then sometimes the best thing to do is to try to get on the good side of them by storing up lots of positive impressions with everyone you know in case you ever find yourself dependent on the goodwill of those other people. For encounter stress, another strategy you might look into is learning empathy, which means learning to see things from other people's perspective. This can help a lot with encounter stress. If a particular group of people are pushing all your buttons, you need to start to get inside their head to look at the situation from their point of view and discover what is motivating them. If you are a particularly selfish person, you will find this quite hard to do because you can't imagine things from anyone else's perspective. But if you are a person who is maybe slightly broader in your horizons, you will realize how you fit into that other person's plan, and maybe you can adjust the situation to take a more prominent part in their plan. If you understand what is motivating them, what makes them tick, you might realize, oh, it's not about this person beating me, but actually all they want is acknowledgement for the effort they've made. So, to recap briefly, we have looked at 4 different categories of stress: time stress, anticipation stress, situation stress, and encounter stress. And being able to identify the sort of stress you're experiencing will help you to decide how large will be the role of meditation in helping you to reduce your experience of this stress. Whatever the sort of stress, meditation is bound to have some role in helping with the reduction. And to this end, before we go any further, to look directly at some of the meditation and mindfulness strategies for stress, we will take the opportunity to settle ourselves for some meditation. So if you would like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now, as you listen to my guidance. So we settle ourselves down for some meditation time. Taking a few moments, first of all, to make sure our body is relaxed. Closing our eyes gently and breathing deeply. Breathing to the full extent of our lungs, and then breathing slowly and smoothly out again. So again, breathing the refreshing air that has come to us at this time. And as we breathe out, perhaps feeling that we're letting go of any of the previous worries or concerns we may have had. We make sure all the muscles of our body are properly relaxed. By doing what's known as a body scan. Starting at the top of our head and scanning down through our body, relaxing each and every muscle as we go. Relaxing our forehead, our eyebrows and eyelids. Making sure the way we've closed our eyes is as gentle as possible. Allowing the muscles of our face to become soft. Relaxing our jaw. taking care not to clench our teeth together. Relaxing our neck and shoulders. If necessary, allowing our shoulders to drop to their natural height. Relaxing both arms, forearms, and then our hands and fingers. And relaxing the whole of our torso, chest, trunk, and abdomen. Taking special care of the muscles across our stomach. And relaxing both the legs, all the way down to our feet and our toes. Until we feel satisfied that no remaining part of our body has any stress or tension anymore. Almost to the point where our whole body seems to melt away into the atmosphere around us. From there we turn our attention to relaxing the mind, which means turning our attention inward to the sense of warmth or well-being or of inner space. Something which by any other name we might call our state of mind. And we gather our attention back from all the possible distractions in the outside world. So that is anything outside of the space of our body. Gathering our attention back inside ourselves. Putting aside any worries or concerns on our mind. And remaining in the present moment. Keeping our attention on the task in hand. And inside us conjuring up a sense of happiness and joy. Perhaps casting our mind back to some happy time in our life. Or even an occasion where we were able to help someone else, but felt good about it on the inside of ourselves. That warm, fuzzy feeling that comes with an act of altruism. Just thinking about the feeling will bring the same feeling back again. We allow that positive energy to grow and spread within us to the point that there's no space left inside us for any other sort of thought. And when we feel relaxed both in body and in mind, very gently, using no effort at all, we imagine the whole of our body to be nothing but a hollow cavity without any organs or tissues, muscles or bones. Or if you prefer to think of the body as something like a transparent bubble with nothing on the inside. We think back to whatever object of meditation works best for us. It might be a picture such as that of the sun shining brightly, yellow or golden color. Or it might be an object that we feel. We know it's there by our sense of touch, almost like the sensation of a feather touching us. We relocate that object gently downwards, allowing it to float down within the space of our body until it comes to rest somewhere around about the level of our diaphragm, about 2 finger breadths above the level of our navel, the center of our body, or at the point of the deepest breath, point where the breath turns between the in-breath and the out-breath. They're all the same point. The way we find that place is by using our feeling. We feel it's right, and it generally is the right place already. The exercise of meditation is about maintaining that sense of focus by means of our inner object at that deepest point of the breath, the center of our diaphragm, or the seventh base of the mind as it's called in our Dhamma meditation technique. We find our attention slipping away onto other things, and each time we simply bring our attention back again. Little by little we build up the habit in the mind. Keeping the mind on track at the center of the body. If we have thoughts in the mind, we do our best to ignore them, at least not to elaborate on them. Unless you're one of those people who has so many thoughts that it's impossible even to not get entangled in them. In which case you may need to make use of the traditional mantra, hearing the sound of words repeated over and over in the mind, such as the words Samma Arahang. So the actual source of the words is down there at the center of your body, along with the inner object. Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, lightly, gently and continuously. With a special lightness of touch. In our inner object, whether it's something we see or something we feel. Always at the center of whatever is there. Even if it's darkness, we can be at the center of it. But the important thing is the lightness of touch. Continue to maintain our attention on track at the center of the body. To our own meditation for a few more moments in silence until we come to the appropriate time. Don't forget if your mind wanders away onto other things. Each time you realize, simply bring your attention back again to the center of the body as before, bringing it back for as many times as it takes to become established, form a connection with the center, a way that you can actually feel the connection. If the thoughts return, do your best to ignore them. Make use of the mantra if ignoring them isn't working. And always double check to make sure you're using only the very lightest of touch in the way you apply your mind at the center. Sappa Buddhanupavena, Sappa Dhammanupavena, Sappa Sankhanupavena Sattha Soti Bhavantu Te. So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position and gently finish your practice. So more and more attention has been drawn to meditation as an antidote to negative aspects of stress. If you are stressed and you don't know about meditation, the alternatives available are much more scary. Conventional treatment usually equates with antidepressants or sleeping pills, because you go to your doctor and they say, "Well, you're stressed, what's the problem?" You say, "The symptoms are I can't sleep and I'm depressed." So they give you more sleeping pills so that you can sleep, and more Prozac so you don't feel anything anymore. But it doesn't actually take your stress away. So after some time you build up resistance to those antidepressants and to the sleeping tablets, so you need to take even more of them to get the same effect. So they don't actually solve the problem at the root. Meditation, by contrast, can certainly do a lot more to alleviate stress, to the extent that it has sometimes been referred to as a stress buster. Meditation has been shown ultimately to reprogram the brain with more capacity to manage stress. Meditation induces the mind to be more open and less reactive. We're able to cope better with life's stressors, because meditation reduces our stress level and irritability by promoting relaxation and restful sleep. Meditation also releases negative emotions and helps to calm the emotional roller coaster that can otherwise spill over into our lives or to our nearest and dearest. General research on mindfulness by Talkovsky and Lang have shown that meditation can be a promising alternative for the treatment of PTSD. But more specifically concerning our Dhammakaya meditation, Sutsuang et al. Ran a comparison of those who meditated and those who didn't meditate by measuring cortisol levels in those suffering from stress, because high cortisol levels indicate high levels of stress. In the experiment, there was a control group in the green where they measured cortisol levels over the course of 6 weeks. They compared cortisol levels to an experimental group in the red who did meditation during the 6 weeks for an hour a day, following the same meditation method as we use, and they discovered that the cortisol levels dropped in the group that meditated and stayed low in a significant way. Therefore, meditation seems to help people in coping with stress, and you could do the same for people's pulse rate and blood pressure. Stress and meditation, therefore, seem to be inversely related. In England, they even have adopted meditation as an alternative therapy now for stress, where people can choose to learn to meditate instead of taking sleeping pills. Doctors now retrain themselves to be meditation teachers for those who wish to follow that alternative therapy. In fact, even some monks have retrained themselves too, and there's a funny story I know from a Sri Lankan monk who's a friend of mine who qualified himself for what's known as mindfulness-based stress reduction, and in his little temple in Glasgow, in Scotland, every Tuesday night he signed up patients suffering from stress, charging them several $100s each for the privilege of being able to come and meditate with this monk and learn about aspects of Buddhism and meditation. In his class, there were never less than 10 people who came every Tuesday night without fail. Meanwhile, on Friday nights, the same monk held a Buddhism class where people could come along and meditate with him and get taught about Buddhism for free. Do you know how many people came for the Friday night class? Well, normally it was a maximum of only 2 people. So the moral of this story is that some people only see the value of things they pay for. If you pay more for it, then you value it more. In fact, the last time I saw that monk, he announced in front of his congregation that he wasn't going to bother doing any Buddhist ceremonies anymore because he was just going to stick to teaching mindfulness-based stress reduction because it was a more reliable way to pay off the mortgage on his temple. There's a lot more research done than I have had the time to go into today, but I've focused on how stress relates to the type of meditation we are familiar with. Anyone interested to look into some of the other research should look back at the first peacetime session I recorded, I think it's A001 to A002, in which I describe some of the research conducted on breathing meditation and transcendental meditation, where stress reduction is just one of many benefits that have been linked with meditating. So, how can we know when to deal with stress by modifying this trigger and when to deal with it by meditating? The outside events that trigger stress tend to come in 2 different categories. Type 1 stressors tend to be particular, well-defined events that maybe happen now and then where you can probably tell quite easily what triggered the situation, so clearly definable triggers. Examples of these might be you burn your toast, or your printer runs out of ink. Therefore, you have stress, but the solution to the stress may be quite simply to remedy what's causing it by getting a fresh slice of bread or replacing the ink cartridge, allowing your stress levels to return to their normal level. For these sorts of type 1 stressors, your mental reaction to your stress may not be worth exploring because it may be more efficient just to focus on the trigger. But for type 2 stressors, the triggers may be more vaguely defined. Type 2 stressors are generally the sort of stressors that are built up over a long time until you reach the so-called final straw that breaks the camel's back and have a nervous breakdown or something like that. This second type of stressor is not so easily resolved, and this is why instead of trying to track the stress back to what caused it, you might be better dealing with your mental reaction to it. And this is where it is easier to build a good pair of shoes for yourself than to carpet the whole world. Examples of type 2 stressors would be ongoing conflict, maybe with the people you you live with, or persistent financial distress. You can imagine debt where interest just keeps on piling up, and in the end, you just don't know what to do about it anymore. Bad relationships are often classified as type 2 stressors because the stress is not so easily resolved, and you'll be better working with your response to the stress rather than the trigger itself. So for all these type 2 stressors, it's important to remember to focus on your response when you de-stress, and it is in the realm of stress where knowing how to meditate can really empower you to take back control. I'd like to finish up with a happy ending story of meditation and stress. Back in 2016, I had a strange experience with a very new meditation student who had only been coming for meditation classes for 3 weeks. So she'd only been meditating in effect for 3 weeks. She turned up at the meditation center one day with a letter saying that she had lost her job. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be where she blames me for teaching her a meditation that has led her to lose her job. And maybe the letter is a cease and desist order from her lawyer. But it turned out to be exactly the opposite. She said, it's a thank you letter I've written to you because I wasn't sure I'd be able to express myself as well as I wanted to. And the letter explained how she'd just been fired from a job she really liked. She said, normally for me, if I had got fired, it would just send me into a very negative place. I would be like a walking disaster area. But she said, when I got my notice, the first thing I thought to do was to go away somewhere quiet and sit down and meditate. So she went to a park bench somewhere with a nice view, and she sat down and she said she had her best ever meditation in her life, where inside her, instead of just being like sunshine or something inside, it's like sunshine with diamonds and rainbows, and she felt happier than she had ever felt in her life, at which point she realized that this whole thing about the job was really just a triviality. She said she realized what was valuable to her in her life was much deeper than her place of work, and she said she wanted to thank the meditation center for having taught her the means by which to find a silver lining in the crisis and gain true perspective on her life. So some practical tips from the same issue of Time magazine with Heather Graham on the cover to reduce stress. There are 3 things. Try wearing a watch, not an Apple Watch, so you can avoid picking up your phone to check the time and won't be needlessly distracted. Secondly, don't bring your phone into bed with you and make sure you are fully awake before you look at any of your devices. And lastly, take any opportunity to get out into nature. Take a hike and observe your surroundings while resisting the urge to Instagram them. So, even if bad things happen, don't let yourself get stressed out as if things couldn't be worse. Take the fortune cookie attitude that one door has to close before another one opens, and it will always help you to look on the bright side of life. You'll be able to laugh stress off with the attitude that if they fired you, then they weren't good enough for you in the first place. And if the worst does come to the worst, then you'll be able to adapt your emotions so that you can reason or bluff your way out of the stressful situation. Meditation gives us a better and more reliable way to reduce our vulnerability to that stress and deflect stress from us in a way that wouldn't be possible if our mind was untrained. On balance, it's probably much less arduous to meditate away your stress than to be constantly popping pills to do away with the symptoms. My argument this session has been that for nearly every case of stress you encounter, you need to look at 2 things, which is the trigger and what is your response to it. If you can change the trigger, then go ahead and do it. In your workplace, if you're being exploited, then talk to them about it. But sometimes it's not easy to identify the cause of stress from the outside, and in such a case, one thing you certainly can do is change your reaction to it, especially on the emotional side, and in this respect, meditation will help. So we come to time for some answers to the questions you've sent in. And questions on this live stream are a bit like public buses. When you want one, there's none to be seen, but then just when you've given up hope, they all turn up at the same time. So today, instead of no questions, we have 4 questions from the viewers. And we turn to answer the questions sent in now. And the first question this time comes from Pichapa Tepong, who coordinates our monthly West Coast Zoom group from Portland. So here comes the question. What is the best way to identify stress as different from thinking a lot? Hi Pichapa, and thank you for your question. A useful telltale sign for you to tell the difference between thinking too much about things and being stressed out by them is the way it affects the body physically. If you notice that your body is becoming physically tense, losing weight or losing sleep as a result of the pressure being put on you by your thoughts, then that is the point where you can start to call it stress and you need to do something about it. So, don't let it get so serious that you're actually locked up by the stress physically. Physical signs are a good way to check in with yourself to make sure that an excess of thoughts on your mind have not become something more insidious. The second question, which is connected to the first one, also from Pichapa, is, can our stress cause harm to others? Hi again, Pichapa. And to answer your second question, I think a person's stress doesn't directly cause harm to others, but what we do as a result of our stress may adversely affect other people, because if we are stressed, then it makes it very hard for us to appreciate anything positive in life. So the way we treat other people will start to reflect this. Stressed people tend to have blaming behaviors. They can't accept that some of their stresses are due to their own choices rather than the people around them. By de-stressing ourselves, it is helping the people around us too, to help us to see things in a level-headed way rather than lashing out at other people and not spreading that negativity to the others around us, since it is contagious rather like a wildfire in some cases. The next question comes from Jane Godfrey of Doncaster in the UK, and here comes a question. I see many people have enjoyed bringing pets into their homes in the pandemic. I have had dogs in the past, and their companionship and getting out for exercise and fun is great. The downside of pets is veterinary bills and end-of-life care. I have time for a pet, but I am concerned about the karma of end-of-life issues. With pets, we often choose how and when to end a pet's life based on suffering and recovery possibilities. So how does this affect the karma of pet and human? Hi Jane, and thank you for your question. This question of pets is something where most people think that Buddhist beliefs about being compassionate would mean that Buddhists would want to have a lot of pets so they can be kind to animals. But on the contrary, you will find in Buddhist majority countries in Asia that it's actually quite rare for people to bring animals into their houses as pets. It is considered as unhygienic as wearing your shoes to go into the house. This doesn't mean that Buddhists are unkind to animals, but they tend to express kindness to animals in terms of feeding hungry animals that live in the wild. When it comes to owning animals or caging animals, Buddhists tend not to consider these as compassionate ways to treat animals. Really, the ambivalence about keeping pets comes most strongly from our temple in terms of the teachings of Kunyai, which go back to a time when a stray dog started hanging around the temple and befriending the residents. Kunyai recommended releasing the animal a long way from the temple because she said that although on the surface the animal may seem eager to please and happy to be fed, what we fail to notice is the grudges the animal builds up when we are slow to feed it or if we fail to give it something tasty from our own table. These grudges can build up into vengeance between us and the animal that will carry over into future lifetimes. Worse than this is the responsibility for a pet's life that falls on us at the end of its life. Mostly the veterinarian's recommendation for us when the pet reaches the point where healthcare is no longer economical is to put the animal down or to euthanize it. The final decision and hence the karma for killing the animal falls on the pet owner. Therefore, by getting a pet, you are also buying into the final decision that will be the cause of the pet's death. For this reason, I would recommend against getting your own pet, but maybe go and enjoy watching animals in the wild instead, or Subscribe to a pet library where you can go and stroke someone else's cat or dog for the day, or maybe become an employee for the WAG app. A final question comes from Joe Nontocorn of Nevada. Here comes the question. I'm a registered clinical hypnotherapist in Las Vegas, and my treatments bring benefit to patients looking for medical support, increased self-esteem, athletic performance, and trauma recovery. My usual therapy includes the instructions, deep breath in and exhale, before the hypnosis induction. Lately, I have tried adding Samma Arahang to the initial relaxation, and it has seemed to help at least 3 of my patients to relax and focus on their breath more effectively than usual. When I go further with some trauma and PTSD patients and incorporate the whole Arahang Samma chanting when traumatic images come up, it helps them to calm their mind to a much deeper level to realize what holds them back, so that they can acknowledge, remedy, and move forward, and it appears to spread the awareness of meditation. So my question, whether mixing up hypnotherapy and Buddhist chanting somehow devalues or is a conflict of interest with the Buddhist religion. Hi Joe Nontagon, and thank you for your question. I think there is no harm in incorporating religious content in your hypnotherapy relaxations, especially if you are clear that you're not trying to convert anyone to a new religion or put a foreign language spell on them, or if you give them an alternative choice of English language inductions. There are a couple of possible incompatibilities to watch out for between hypnotherapy and Buddhist meditation, which I have learned from dialogue with those experienced in both traditions. The first difference, which is not so serious, is that hypnotherapy and therapy in general tends to be applied to specific symptoms or complaints, such as, let's say, giving up smoking, whereas Buddhist meditation is meant to promote general well-being. Therefore, you could say that there is some overlap between therapies and Buddhism. The second distinction between some sorts of hypnotherapy and meditation is to do with the place where the attention is focused during the practice. With Buddhist compatible meditations, the focus of meditation should always be internal to the body and preferably at the center of the body, 2 finger breadths above the level of the navel. However, for some cliched hypnotic inductions, the focus of the attention is external to the body. For example, getting the client to focus their attention on a swinging watch or an intense eye gaze. Because the focus is externalized, it will lead to the client getting into a trance-like state over which the client has no control, and which is borderline related to spiritualism or black magic, and therefore would not be compatible with the Buddhist path of progress. I'm not sure whether post-hypnotic amnesia or suggestion you use are compatible with inner focus, but if they are, then there is no harm in mixing Buddhism with muscle relaxation and inner visualization that you said you used in your induction. If a person starts out by taking therapy, for example, to give up smoking, but later goes on to realize their suffering in life is not restricted to a single demon, but is an existential condition, to make self-improvement a philosophy in their life, then having a therapy is a gateway to spiritual transformation, then the introduction to Buddhism is to be welcomed. Also, the nature of the sound of the Pali language chanting, the long vowels, and the resonant ambience is known to have a therapeutic effect on the chanter and the listener alike, regardless of whether they know the meaning. However, I would like to draw the line at mainstreaming Buddhist techniques by commercializing and copywriting them. There have been some instances of common wisdom with mindfulness meditation that I would say are examples of inappropriate mixing of therapy and Buddhism. A lot of these techniques, like the colleague I mentioned from Glasgow I described earlier, are perhaps reaching a new audience of people who prefer to learn meditation in a therapeutic context. In the famous words of G.U. Kenneth Roshi, sometimes it's like trying to sell water by the river. So The water is there available freely to be drunk in the river, but people are trying to bottle the water and sell it right by the river. So the only downside I can think of is if the words of chanting are trivialized or not treated with respect. So let me finish with a quick mention about temple support and a news update about the availability of meditation teaching in English. For those of you who like to visit the temple in Azusa to bring offerings, please be informed that there is a new site for a temple offering in the parking lot next to the main temple building, between 10 and 11 a.m. every day. If you have trouble with the passcode on the gate or wish to visit at a different time, please call Jenny on 562-716-2961. There will be a monk on standby in PPE to receive the offering and give a short blessing for visitors. English-speaking monks will be on duty on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And a short ceremony for 5 precepts, meditation and a blessing are given on the weekends, starting at 10:45 a.m. As for temple donations, you can see the details on the ticker tape for those of you wishing to support the temple without attending in person. Needless to say, the whole temple would like to rejoice in the merits of all taking the opportunity to support the temple in this way. Meditation is particularly valuable in this COVID era to help us cope with the extended lockdown, and in this respect, here at the temple, although there are still no face-to-face teaching sessions for the interim, you can access Dhamma teachings in English at the YouTube channel called Peace Point Meditation or the Facebook page of Peace Point Meditation. And there are also possibilities for watching these via Zoom as well, although I haven't got the details today. For those of you who have been following my talks, you may be interested to subscribe to a YouTube channel, which I have recently set up in my own name, which can be found by searching for Phra Nicholas Thanissaro on YouTube, where I've uploaded more than 100 clips of meditations, Dhamma talks, funeral talks, talks for children, and so forth. Meanwhile, there is a streamlined schedule by popular request for 2021 on Peace Point. Every Sunday morning, you now have got me with live materials and archive materials on alternating Sundays. Venerable Sopon now appears every Thursday evening. Meanwhile, Peace Breaks from Peace Point are broadcast every Monday and Wednesday between 7 and 7:30 p.m. And there's a silent meditation broadcast each Friday between 7 and 8 p.m. For the benefit of families listening in, there is also a special show for children in English known as Shining Stars that goes out between 7:30 and 8 p.m. every Monday evening with bedtime stories and meditation short enough to keep the attention of younger listeners. Outside of the live streams and the on-demand programming, there is also a newly updated MindGem app, which you can download for free, allowing you to listen to meditation and Dhamma talks in English on your cell phone, even when you are offline. So this session we have looked at the topic of how to manage daily stress through meditation. For my next live session online with you, which will fingers crossed be a week on Sunday morning, we'll be moving on to look at something along the lines of patience, obstinacy, and stubbornness. So for good measure, I would like to remind viewers that even better than posting thank you or great talk or sadhu in the broadcast comments, you can email your questions about meditation or what you have heard in the lecture to the email address you can see spelled out in the slide, and I will do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Also, may you be able to apply the advice I've given you today to truly break free from all the negative aspects of stress once and for all. So for today, this is me, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, signing off for this session. So long, folks, and stay safe.